Hello World Civilization students, Mr. Lassiter here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the age of exploration, trying to get a general overview over its causes and major events. So taking a look at our video goals questions, we want to think about how the age of exploration changed Europe's role in the world, what the causes for it were, and what the motivations Europeans had to explore. And then also think about the roles of two important countries in this age of exploration. Those are Portugal and Spain. So to start with, we want to think about Europe on the eve of exploration, just before this age begins. And in the Middle Ages, remember that Europe, for the most part, was isolated. There was very little trade with the rest of the world. This starts to change as we come into the modern age, as we get into the Renaissance. We see Italian city-states beginning to trade with the Middle East. This brings exciting new technologies and ideas and goods into Europe. This new knowledge also spurs on a desire for people in Western Europe to begin trading. And so they're going to start to look outward to get at goods that are in the Indian Ocean, whether they are in India or Southeast Asia or China. Of course, at this time, the Americas had not been discovered by Europeans, and they did not know that those even existed. And of course, likewise, the Americas not knowing that Afro-Eurasia existed outside of their own hemisphere. Now, the age of exploration, when Europeans start to look beyond themselves and sail into the Indian Ocean, into the Americas, is caused by three major things. The first, new technologies. New instruments, things like the astrolabe, which was a device for measuring your position, your latitude on Earth, and the compass, a device for measuring direction. Those make their way to Europe from other places. The astrolabe and compass had both come to Europe from the Middle East. The compass had actually come to the Middle East from further away in China. New map-making techniques also make exploration safer for Europeans and easier. They used those tools like the astrolabe and compass to develop new and more accurate maps. And if you have an accurate map, you can travel further away from home and, of course, find your way back. And the last thing were new ship designs. Ships like the caravel, which you see pictured here, gave Europeans an efficient mode of transportation. And the caravel itself was a small, maneuverable ship that actually used more technologies from the Middle East and Indian Ocean. Things like the lateen sail, which is that triangular sail, was combined with more European-style square sails to create a versatile ship. In addition to new technology, one of the causes of this age of exploration was the desire for goods from Asia. The most important of these were spices coming out of the Indian Ocean, especially India and Southeast Asia. Spices like nutmeg and cinnamon and black pepper were extremely valuable and could be sold for a lot of money in Europe. Of course, that's because there were a lot of middlemen. To get at a spice like cinnamon, it would have been traded from Indian traders into the Middle East to Arab traders, who then would have traded it with the Italians, who then would have brought it to Western Europe. And since every middleman has to get paid, they became quite expensive. The cheaper way of doing it would be to access those markets directly. But of course, there were barriers to accessing these markets, and this is the third reason why Western European countries start to look for their own route to Asia. Italian city-states, places like Venice, had dominated and controlled most of the trade in the Mediterranean Sea, and that had happened for a long time. And the countries that are going to lead this exploration, Portugal and Spain on the Iberian Peninsula, they wanted direct trade with Asia in order to avoid trading with the Muslim Ottoman Empire. They themselves, as Catholic nations who had fought wars against Muslims for hundreds of years, did not want to do business with these middlemen. And thus, those two countries, Portugal and Spain, will be the first to look outside of this region and try to find their own routes to India. Now, as far as that motivation, of course, these causes and motivations go hand in hand. You may have heard the old term God, glory, gold as an easy way to remember the motivations of Europeans. So first, let's think about God. One of the biggest motivations for Europeans in exploring first the coast of Africa and then, once the Americas are discovered, for conquering the Americas was to spread Christianity, spread it beyond Europe into many different regions of the world. The second motivation, glory, is the idea of achieving fame. This could have been personal fame or even just claiming land for the good of the nation, making a nation powerful and being important in that process. You see pictured here Hernan Cortez, who conquered the Aztec Empire. His second cousin, once removed, Francisco Pizarro, would conquer the Inca Empire. And of course, they certainly achieved that fame. We're still talking about them today. And the last thing, of course, is that idea of gold. Now, this doesn't just mean physical gold, although Europeans hoped to find that. But this involves becoming rich through trade, making a lot of profits. And that was initially believed to occur through trading for spices. That is how Europeans saw themselves making money in the long term, perhaps accessing gold and ivory and trading slaves in sub-Saharan Africa. But for the most part, they thought they were going to access those spices or porcelain and silk from China. In some cases, they actually do quite literally strike it rich, discovering deposits of gold, but especially silver in the Americas. Especially one site, Potosi, was discovered by the Spanish, and it was basically a mountain of pure silver that made Spain the richest country on earth and gave them the money they needed to trade for all of those spices, silk, and porcelain that they wanted from China, India, and Southeast Asia. Now, Portuguese exploration in general, we're going to give it a quick overview and then look at Spain, and then we'll be done. Portuguese exploration begins under the guidance of a specific prince who was very much interested in exploration, and we call him Prince Henry the Navigator. He opened up schools to learn about the tools of navigation and to teach about map making and exploration. And beyond that, the Portuguese really just wanted access to the Indian Ocean. They did not want to have to go through those Muslim middlemen. So this started with exploration of the African coast, first trying to reach sub-Saharan Africa and deposits of gold there and ivory and trading in slaves. But eventually, the Portuguese are able to go further. They wanted access, of course, to those spices, those markets in the Indian Ocean. And in 1498, 6 years after Columbus discovers America, they finally succeed in sailing all the way to India. Vasco da Gama is the explorer that you should know there. He led those expeditions to India. Of course, one of the things that make sure Portugal can take control of the spice trade in the Indian Ocean is that they had really powerful weapons. Europeans had developed gunpowder technology and created cannons and the like, which surpassed pretty much anything that was available in the east coast of Africa or in India and in some places of Southeast Asia, allowing them to control prominent trade cities. Thus gaining a great deal of wealth and creating a trading post empire. Now, the other country on the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, also set out exploring, although they started about 40 to 50 years after the Portuguese had begun. And their exploration really starts once the country of Spain, as we know it today, forms. It had been broken into several kingdoms, and the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon united into one country in 1482 when the King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella married each other, uniting their kingdoms under one crown. And being staunch Catholics, they then set out to expel all non-Catholics from Spain, especially Jews and Muslims, who had the choice to either convert to Catholicism or leave the country. And so they carry out a series of wars, which end in 1492, eventually defeating the last Muslim kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula. And in sort of a celebration that same year, Christopher Columbus proposes a trip west to try to reach India. And so Ferdinand and Isabella agree to fund his voyage, and Christopher Columbus sets sail, arrives in the Americas, and simply thinks he has reached India, thinks he has done it. Although when he returns to Spain, it is quite evident he has not. Spain did lay claim to land in the Americas. This allows them to create a massive empire, something like 15 or 16 times the size of their own territory in Spain. Of course, the discovery of silver in South America made them rich and helps to fund trade with Asia. They do send out other expeditions. Columbus is not the only prominent Spanish explorer. Ferdinand Magellan is a good one. He leads the first expedition that circumnavigates the globe, although he dies on that journey. And Spain begins to trade not just between Europe and the New World, but also between the New World and Asia. So that's it in this video, looking at how the Age of Exploration changed Europe's roles, made them active in this trade, thinking about the causes and the motivations, and what Portugal and Spain did specifically. In our next videos, you're going to take a look at how the Spanish conquered territory in the Americas and what the effects of this Age of Exploration were. So look out for those videos. They contain extremely important information. That's it. Have a good day.